you don't count calories on the ketogenic diet, nor do you count calories doing intermittent fasting.
Welcome to Champions Mojo Weekly Podcast with your hosts, Kelly Palace and Maria Parker. You'll hear authentic, entertaining stories with tips, lessons, and wisdom from champions to inspire, motivate, and educate you. You'll get the tools you need for becoming a true champion in your own life. And now, your host, Kelly Palace.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo Podcast. Today's show is going to be fantastic. We're going to talk about a subject that affects all of us every day, and that is the food that we eat, and not just what we eat, but when we eat. You'll learn about two of today's most promising and popular, newer eating regimens. Those are the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting, which can both help you get healthier, feel more energetic, and perform better, whether it's in athletics or in life. There's so much information out there, some good, some bad. We're going to break this down. And as always, I'm co-hosting with Maria Parker. Maria, hello.
Hey, Kelly. I'm so excited about today's topic. I'm extremely passionate about nutrition and diet, so real excited to talk about it today.
Me too. So thanks, Maria. And before we jump into these topics, I want to just say right up front that what we're discussing today is not medical advice. It's just Maria and I, how we eat. We both have experience with these two different eating regimens, and we're going to discuss that from our perspective as swimmers and cyclists. So regarding eating ketogenically, I'd like to interview you, Maria, as one of the most promising diets, which you refer to as the keto diet, like many. I remember back in March when I interviewed world champion swimmer Michael Andrew, he and his family were on the keto diet. So, Maria, since you and your husband have been keto for years, I'd like to make you the expert and ask you, how did you guys decide to go keto?
That's a great question. We've been mostly keto for about 3.5 years. And really, I wanted to start because I was having trouble doing endurance events. I was having nausea and stomach issues. And I read about the ketogenic diet. And one of the benefits is that you can go for a long time without eating because you can burn fat. Instead of having to carb up every hour. You know, if you're doing a long event, you know, most people can only take in about 250 or 300 calories an hour, and that's just not enough. And I couldn't even take in that much because of nausea. So I went on the keto diet in advance of an event that I was going to do. It was about 2 months out, and I have to tell you, I didn't want to do it. I am a carb addict. I love sugar, carbs. I grew up eating bread, rice, pasta, candy. I just love carbs. I only did it because this event was more important to me than my love for carbs. And so I just, I thought I can just do this for a couple of months and we'll see if it works. Well, I did it. And the event went really well. I had no nausea. I was able to go 24 hours on my bike with 0 calories. I had salts and fluids, but I did not eat a single calorie. And I set a new record, and I didn't have to deal with nausea and vomiting as I often did in those events. But the reason that we're still on it was all the side of, I don't want to call them side effects, side benefits. Now they're sort of major benefits, but the most important thing for me was I achieved a clarity that I hadn't had for many years. My memory had been just sort of deteriorating. I'm 56 years old, and that happens. You lose your nouns and so forth. But it just was really upsetting. I couldn't remember the names of my neighbors, and I was beginning to worry I had some sort of early onset dementia. And the keto really, really helped with that. It helped with lots of other things too. I found my teeth were less inflamed, my skin cleared up. I stopped having any reflux, no gastrointestinal reflux at all. So we went on it. I went on it for the event. Jim joined me, and we stayed on it because we loved how we felt on it. It was, and we still do.
And now you didn't need to lose any weight, but I know my brother, your husband, he was definitely, when he went keto, you didn't lose weight, but didn't Jim lose some weight?
Yeah, Jim did. He lost about 30 or 40 pounds. He looked great. It can be a weight loss diet. It's funny. What I love about it is you don't count calories. You don't even think about calories. And I should back up and say that a ketogenic diet, ketogenic means that you're producing ketones, which are a byproduct of fat burning. And so, you're basically teaching your body to be better at burning fat, which is super good for endurance athletes, but it's good for everybody, especially people who may struggle. It's for some people, some diabetics can go on this diet and actually cure their diabetes. There's a lot of, it's a hot diet or a hot topic right now, and there's been a lot of pushback from nutritionists about the safety and efficacy of it. And so I don't ever recommend it anymore because I just know that for me and for Jim, it's amazing. And he's, we've also talked to other people. I've had several people who have been on it tell me that their their GERD reflux completely goes away, which you don't even read about that, but that's absolutely a benefit. People will be on these proton pump inhibitors for years because they have the burning in the stomach, but the keto diet absolutely cures that, or it seems to.
So Maria, what do you eat on the keto diet? What do you guys eat on that?
That's a great question. So keto diet is high fat, moderate protein, and low carb. And
so high fat, moderate protein, low carb. Okay.
Right.
So yeah, what does that look like? Kind of give me a day. I wake up, I eat this, and then for lunch we have that.
That's great. So what I tell anybody who, is curious about it is that the base of every meal for me is vegetables. Low carb vegetables, not potatoes, but, not mostly greens and green beans and, anything that zucchini and squash. So I this morning, for instance, we had kohlrabi, which was sauteed in olive oil and garlic and scrambled eggs with cheese.
Okay, back up. What the heck is kohlrabi?
It's a green. So
green,
you do
okay.
On this diet, I have just discovered all kinds of fun vegetables.
Okay.
So I mean, people think of the keto diet as like an Atkins diet, and it's really not. You really try to keep your proteins moderate because proteins can be broken down and look like sugar to your body. So the thing is, it's fats. So we eat a lot of cheese. We eat a lot of dairy, a lot of nuts. That's our go-to crunchy snack.
Well, I want to say, I visit you and Jim a lot, and you are a fantastic cook. We've never even talked about that on the podcast, but nothing is just more welcoming. And whenever I've come to visit you guys, you just always put this amazing meals on the table. And
Thanks,
so
Kelly.
you're just a fantastic cook. And when I visit you and you serve a keto dinner or keto lunch or keto breakfast, I don't even notice. I just think, oh my gosh, this food is fantastic. It's like, a broccoli casserole and a beautiful green salad. And even you guys even sneak a little bit on the Halo ice cream, right? For a dessert.
Yeah. I try not to eat too many sweet tasting things because it can sort of wake up my carb cravings, but yes, there are, you can use erythritol, you can use some non-nutritive sweeteners, if you, and then that's sort of a hack for starting the ketogenic diet, because those of us like me, who are carb addicts, it's very hard to go from eating a very sort of sweet, sugary, carby diet to eating none or very little. And so one of the hacks is to have these sort of faux carby foods, like we use. And anybody who's done a ketogenic diet knows this. We use we use cauliflower for like potatoes or rice, and we use
There's even a Mark got it the other day. It's cauliflower pizza. So the crust is made with
There's
cauliflower.
There's a pizza dough you can make with cauliflower, or just basically cheese, and almond flour is very low carb. So I mean, there's you can just Google it, and there's a million ketogenic, really fabulous ketogenic recipes. And the good thing, another really, for me, I'm so passionate about this eating program for me, and I've seen it really benefit other people's. I've seen it really change people. My nephew went on it, and he was like 13, and he had just terrible acne. I mean, he was just terrible inflamed skin. 6 weeks, and it was totally clear. So again, I'm not a doctor, and I don't, it does change the way your body metabolizes things. You have to eat more salt. You got to do things a little bit differently, and you should do your research before you adopt the eating plan. But for me, it's worth it. I'll never go back.
Yeah, and there's so much information out there that
there is.
If someone's interested, listeners are out there, you just have to Google it. There are tons of YouTube videos, there are tons of blogs, there are tons of doctor sites.
I like this website called Diet Doctor. They talk a lot about it, and they're very reasonable. One of the things I don't do that you see a lot, you can take what they call exogenous ketones. You can take pills or liquids that have the ketones in them to increase your, and I don't do that. I never have. And I'm not recommending it. And I'm just saying that there are websites that will take advantage of you by, having you buy their exogenous ketones. You don't need to do that.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's a great tip too, from an insider who's been doing it 3.5 years, because it is kind of, it can be fad like. So, talking about the ketogenic diet, of course, being buddies with you and my brother and spending a lot of time with you guys and looking up to you. And I think you've told our listeners many times that your husband, Jim, he's a physician. So
yes,
I've always looked to Jim for medical advice, and
yes,
so
he's a radiologist. So, but he is one of the. Well, I think he's the best doctor in the world.
Yeah, me too. And he's also an elite endurance cyclist himself.
That's right.
And an awesome athlete.
That's right.
Really gifted athletically, and but spends a lot of time, being a doctor. So he has tried to convince me to use the ketogenic diet. So some of you listeners may be like, well, if Kelly's so close with Jim and Maria, why isn't she doing the ketogenic diet? And my husband is the same way. So the four of us do a lot together. We vacation together. We've gone on a cruise together. We do things together. And so Mark and I were like, let's do the ketogenic diet, because we're sold on you guys. We just, if Jim and Maria are doing it, it's got to be good, kind of thing. So I prefaced this conversation with Mark and I tried it. And I think one of the failings for me is that I am not a cook. I am not a food prep. I just never got there. So it's
that's a good point. It does require a little bit more time in the kitchen. You can't just eat fast food or salads. You can't just go out there and grab stuff. Although we do eat out all the time, but I think to do it really well and healthfully, cooking lots of vegetables and that of course takes time.
Yes, it takes time. So, and the other thing too is I just felt like it did not fit me, and I went on it for I think at least 2 months, and I just could never, it just never clicked over for me. I didn't really even I know there's something called the keto flu, where your body adapts from burning glycogen and carbohydrates to burning fat. And some people will get flu-like symptoms. Again, you can Google those, keto flu. I got maybe a little bit of that, but then I passed through it, and I was definitely burning ketones. And so I just didn't go there, but in continually trying to do research into what is a great diet, I ran into something called intermittent fasting, which I am just so passionate about. And intermittent fasting has a lot in common with the the ketogenic diet. So
That's
intermittent
right.
fasting is
It's
kind of
about
like
burning fat, right?
Yeah, it's about burning fat instead of glycogen. So it's kind of like I would say the easier way to burn fat and not ketones. So the intermittent fasting is basically an eating window. So what it is looking at your fasted state. So intermittent fasting sometimes is referred to as IMF, even though there's no real M. The M is in the middle of a word. Some people call it IMF or just IF, but it means you pick a core window of eating time. And one of the things that you said, Maria, that I think people really need, if they hear nothing else, maybe this can be the quote at the beginning of the podcast, but you don't count calories on the ketogenic diet, nor do you count calories doing intermittent fasting. So I just love that everybody was, the going out the window of these over exercising or counting calories. So you just don't need to do that. So you're restricting the time that you eat. So intermittent fasting would look something like this. You could either alternate a day where you eat every other day on you're fasting. That could be one way to do intermittent fasting. You could fast for one day out of a week. But the favorite, most researched way to intermittent fast is you fast for 16 hours and then you limit your eating window to 8 hours. So that's a 24-hour day. So let's say you stop eating dinner at 6 p.m., then you would not have breakfast until the next day at 10 a.m., which isn't hard at all. I mean, unless you're just, a sleepwalker, night eater that goes to the fridge, you can't have that bowl of ice cream or that bowl of cereal at 9 o'clock because our bodies need the rest and relaxation from digestion is a very hard thing on our bodies. So there are...
Kelly, can I ask you, do you generally do the 16-8 intermittent fasting, or do you do one day a week, or do you alternate different kinds of IF?
I generally do it about 3 times a week. And that's what the experts say.
You do the 16-8
I do the 16-8 3 times a week. And occasionally, once a week, I will try to do at least 20 hours. And some days I'll do 24 once a week. Because there are so many, I'm not doing it for weight loss, but I'm doing it for general health, cleaning up the system. As everybody knows, I had breast cancer. That this, the experts say, and there was the benefit of this fasting is something called autophagy, and autophagy was earned the Nobel Prize. The Japanese researcher, and I'm going to try to pronounce his name, Yoshinori Osumi, got the Nobel Prize for discovering the mechanism for autophagy. So after about 16 hours, your body does autophagy, and autophagy breaks down into self is the auto part of it, and phagy is eating, self-eating, which sounds weird, but once you go into burning fat instead of glycogen, think of the old Pac-Man game with the little faces just eating things. So your body will start eating things that it doesn't need, and they believe that it eats viruses and bacterias and tumors. And even, I love this one from Dr. Stein Ekberg's website. If you really want to get into autophagy, Dr. Stein Ekberg, Ekberg, he has a 25-minute video on YouTube that explains autophagy, and it is awesome. He talks about that when you go into this fasted state, autophagy occurs. Peak autophagy occurs at about 20 to 24 hours. So you don't have to do a 5-day fast or a 3-day fast. But he says that it's anti-aging, that it's going to help detox the body. It boosts your immune system. It improves your tissue quality. It lowers insulin. So same thing that the ketogenic diet does. It will lower diabetic, people who are diabetic will do intermittent fasting, and they'll get off all their medications. They'll lose weight. It raises good hormones. And I love this one. It reduces skin sag. So I mean, if you've lost,
it'll make you
weight,
look like you're 18 again.
I don't know about that, but it even helps traumatic brain injuries recover faster, and it lowers your risk for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Because think of, my mom just passed away last year from Alzheimer's, and we actually, she was so amazing to donate her brain to research. And so they found plaques and tangles in her brain to say, yep, she did have Alzheimer's. So the research believes that these little autophagy will even go in and eat the plaques and tangles in your brain. So it's got so many benefits. And I'm doing it because, I don't want my breast cancer to come back. I'm hoping that, it'll keep my immune system healthy for not having eczema, which, I went through red skin syndrome, which is very different than eczema. But anyway, I just think that it's great. I feel more clear. And this is what I wanted people to hear about was, so I used to be a carb eater. I've always genetically tended towards the thin side. So I felt that if I would go out in the world and I didn't have a snack on me anywhere, like the minute I left the house, in my purse, in my backpack, in my car, in my glove compartment,
get panicky.
I would panic. I would think that I was going to crash. So I was one of those people. And then once I started doing eating windows, I learned my body I could wake up and not have breakfast and go out and do a swim workout or do a run or not eat until 1 or 2 o'clock. One of my favorite things, the way that I do it, is I will eat dinner and finish dinner at 5. So we'll eat from 4 to 5. And then I will not eat again until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's 21 hours. It doesn't seem that hard. I drink a lot of green tea in that time, or a lot of tea with stevia. You can drink things that don't have any, or coffee with stevia that don't have any calories. So, but I don't bonk anymore. It's really weird. My body seems to have reset. So I just can't, I can't recommend it enough. I just think that intermittent fasting is a fabulous way to go. And there are 2 documentaries. One is on Amazon Prime called Fasting, which talks about many different types of fasting, but it gives the scientific success that it follows 100 patients that do intermittent fasting and how it changes their blood sugar, their cholesterol, their cardiovascular disease. And then there's a YouTube video, which is a documentary on YouTube called The Science of Fasting. It's about 55 minutes, but those 2 are really worth it if you want to look into, these things that are, they're talking about in fasting and the benefits. And then I'll tell you just my own little anecdote story. Mark and I love to go some afternoons, to Starbucks, and we'll sit and read and journal and do our, afternoon coffee, even though we're decaffeinated. It's funny. We still go to Starbucks, and we've made friends with people as we go there, and their regulars are there. So when we first launched this podcast many months ago, I run into different people, but a lady there, and I'm passionate about intermittent fasting. We started talking about intermittent fasting. There she was having, her food, and I saw her about 2 weeks ago. So this is about 10 weeks later. She told me she had been doing intermittent fasting and that she had lost 10 pounds and that she was off her diabetes medications. And that's exactly what I told her. So she's like, I tried it and it worked for her. So this is just one person that I know. But if you watch these videos, it is really it's just fantastic. And then if you're an athlete out there, you don't need to lose weight. You don't have diabetes. You don't want to change your cholesterol numbers. It's a great way to train even as an elite athlete. Like I said, Michael Andrew, who's a world champion swimmer, is doing ketogenics, which is very similar to intermittent fasting. And, I'm doing it.
The results are the same. And I want to say, that I have not always been thin. And I have struggled with weight and also with just carb cravings most of my life. And the advantage to both intermittent fasting and a ketogenic diet is that after a while, it takes a while, but you stop craving carbs so much. And it is because I think both of them have basically the same mechanism in that it teaches your body to burn fat more easily. Those are different enzymes. They take different enzymes to burn fat than to burn carbs. So if you're constantly feeding yourself with, carbs and sugar, it's easier for your body. And so, it'll always burn carbs before fat. So I want to encourage anybody out there who struggles with carb, addiction. I hate to use the word addiction because it's a little bit too heavy a word for it. But I used to tell my kids that if they ever found me dead, I'd be surrounded by Cadbury cream egg wrappers. I mean, Cadbury
cream eggs. Oh my God.
Yeah. Cadbury cream eggs are the sweetest thing made on the planet, I think.
Agreed.
And I could eat them one after the other, which a lot of people is like, oh my gosh, that's disgusting. Candy corn. I used to love candy corn.
Oh my gosh, Maria.
I know it's disgusting, but what I'm
sugar.
saying is if this is your problem, if you are like me and you drink a lot of sweet stuff or you eat a lot of sweet stuff and you feel imprisoned by it, there are ways out. And intermittent fasting and keto are both relatively easy ways out. I mean, it just helps overcome the carb cravings. Now, Kelly, I did want to ask you one thing about intermittent fasting. I also do intermittent fasting. It's much easier on keto than it was as a regular carb head. But one thing I find is that if I do a pretty long fast, say a 24-hour fast, that I am much hungrier during the eating window. Do you find yourself hungrier during your eating windows?
Yes, I do. Not crazy hungry because being a swimmer, swimmers have a voracious appetite. There's something I think about being in cold water that just clicks that over. So I may not be the best person to ask about being, voraciously hungry, but I think if I ease into it, and this is one of the things that I want to talk about, a few little eating hacks that I know you and I have done to maintain a good balance of our eating. But one of the things that you're supposed to do when you come off of an eating window is start with more fatty and less,
right.
like the same thing. So you don't want to come off a 24-hour window and eat a handful of candy corn. You want to, like, my favorite thing in the world to eat, probably period in general, my favorite thing in the world are macadamia nuts. They're just,
yes.
We call those little butter balls. And
yes, they're crunchy little butter balls. And can we give a shout out to that really good brand, Kelly?
Yes, Maria, our favorite brand. And we are not getting an ad. We're not getting any sponsorship on this, but it's called.
But hey, out there, if you hear this, please do send us some.
Well, that's not why we're doing it, but that's Mac Farms dry roasted macadamia nuts with sea salt, fresh from Hawaii. And it's a big orange bag. They're all natural. They're #1 bestseller on Amazon. They come pretty quickly in the mail, but they're truly like a beautiful fat-based, delicious. They can either be you can put them with something sweet, or you can put them with something salty, and they're just beautiful. But when you come off of a fast, it's good to eat something fatty. And
I want to just add to that, the word breakfast means you're breaking your fast. In the old days, before, year-round lights and day-round lights and food, you would stop eating at, dinner before the sun went down, and you would not eat again until the morning. And often that wouldn't happen until after you went out in the fields and did 3 hours of labor. So you would break your fast. And guess what you broke your fast with? You didn't break it with a bowl of cereal.
Bacon.
You broke it. bacon and eggs.
Yeah.
And that's a nice fatty way to break your fast. And so eggs have come and gone. I mean, every day I read something new about eggs. They're good for you, they're bad for you. They're good for you. I don't know. All I know is I eat a lot of eggs and my cholesterol is beautiful. So,
that's a great point.
Yeah. So, and on the macadamia nuts too, macadamia nuts are filled with fat and they're delicious, really good for you fats too. But I keep mine in the freezer so they don't go rancid because that's a big bag, and they can go bad. That's true with a lot of nuts. The good nuts, you should, if you buy a big bag like I do, keep some out and keep some in the freezer so they last longer.
Yeah, I keep mine in the fridge. I think I eat them so often. I've never had my macadamia nuts go bad, but I literally have like a handful in the morning, a handful in the afternoon, a handful at night. I love to throw them in that Oikos 000 yogurt.
Yes. Now that's a snack that we have. Fatty yogurt. We don't do the 000. We do the Greek with full fat, and with nuts in them, and that's a great snack. Sometimes I'll sweeten it with a little bit of stevia, and it's good for you. And anyway, but I guess I don't want to. I mean, I think some people can think, oh, that's easy for you guys. You're athletes. You're so disciplined. And I would just say I am not disciplined about food. It's something that I've struggled with my whole life. And so if anybody out there struggling with food issues, I mean, these two ways of eating really can help you so that you're not thinking about food all the time.
Yeah. And Maria, I do want to give a couple of cautionary statements for fasting in general. I don't think intermittent fasting triggers this. And my husband, Mark, said that I could mention him on this, which is, we always want to be authentic on our podcast, is that, Mark struggles with something called food addiction. He's been part of Overeaters Anonymous. He has trouble. He cannot do 24-hour fasts. Someday, and we may talk about that on another podcast. I once a month or at least once every quarter, I do a 3-day fast where I just do a lot of purified water. I'll put some pink Himalayan salt and some magnesium in my water and just do a 3-day water fast but that's for a different thing. We're talking about intermittent fasting today. And they say that fasting is not good for people who have ever had disordered eating. So it can trigger, if you've had an eating disorder of any kind, not to do it. If you're a frail diabetic, you want to talk about all this with your doctor anyway, but
obviously everybody should talk to their doctor.
Anybody over, I think, a certain age, maybe a frail senior, 75, 80, you may not want to do intermittent fasting, but, not eating for 16 hours is not going to hopefully trigger any of this. But they also recommend that you start with 12 hours. So you don't go straight to 16. You start with 12 and then you might push it an hour each time you do it. 3 days a week is good. And this is the great part of it that I didn't even mention. I mentioned it to the lady in Starbucks, but, is during the 8-hour eating window. Of course, we're not going to encourage you to do this, but during the 8-hour eating window, you can eat anything you want. And I'm going to just over exaggerate this, but literally you could eat, pizza and ice cream and burgers and fries and Cokes and what you can eat anything you want. That's why we say you don't have to count calories. Of course, you don't want to go crazy and, binge eat, but that is what the beauty of this is, that during those 8 hours, you can eat anything you want. And generally, one of our life hacks that we like to talk about is eating a plant-based diet. I don't eat bacon. I don't generally eat meat. I'll eat some fish, but, I generally consider myself a vegetarian. So I would advocate that you don't eat all that stuff, but you could.
Yeah, whereas I am not a vegetarian. I do think that people misunderstand the ketogenic diet and they eat too much meat. You should eat a lot of fat, but I load my plate with animal-based fats like cheese and cream and as well as olive oil and the good oils. So I eat plenty of meat, and my blood markers are my doctor tells me perfect. So
Yes,
yes. I think it's possible to eat, to eat bacon and eat meat. Obviously Kelly and I are we're just one person, each of us with our little the diets that we try. But I tell people I'm just passionate about the keto diet because of the way it's improved my life personally. I'm not sure it's that way for everybody. My sister went on it and she loved it, but she said she found after about a year that she just didn't want to do it anymore. She wanted to be more relaxed. But what she learned from it was that she could eat a lot of vegetables and a lot of fat, and she didn't have to be keto to be low carb and to actually have a better diet. So there's a lot you can learn from intermittent fasting, and even, just reading about intermittent fasting and thinking about it, or reading about keto and thinking about it without actually having to necessarily fast or go try to be ketogenic.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, like we said earlier, intermittent fasting is kind of the easier step than keto. It's less food prep and a little bit easier to do. And so someone may want to start with the intermittent fasting and see, and they say that, if you're fasted and you're starting to burn fat, that's an easier way to go into trying to be keto. So it might be first step into that. So you don't get the keto flu as much. But, so Maria, just a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about. And like I said, Mark has taught me so much just in general for people that do feel like food addiction or overeating. There's a great two little things that I think are just fun to remember, and they're great little life hacks in general if you're trying to be disciplined. So there's two acronyms. One is HALT, which means if you're really trying to eat properly, are you eating because you're hungry or it's time to eat? Or so HALT stands for, are you really hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Or are you tired? So those are things that I think make people can stop and question, if you're trying to make it, like, let's say
I would add to that, are you thirsty?
Thirsty is a great
you eat
tea.
Because you're thirsty.
Yeah, thirsty is a great tea for that. Tired or thirsty. Let's make the tea in HALT.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to do the 16-hour window or the 12-hour window, and you stopped eating at 5 and it's 8 o'clock, maybe are you really hungry? Or maybe you're angry, maybe you're lonely, maybe you're tired, maybe you're thirsty. So,
another hack that works for me, and I know you alluded to it, is if I'm hungry or I'm thinking, oh, it's 2 more hours until I really want to eat again, I will have a hot beverage.
Yes.
And that just really helps to slow you down. And it's I would say it's part of the HALT. Like if I'm having a hot cup of, sometimes I do hot water with lemon in the winter.
Yes.
And I just love it. It just slows me down. I sit down, I sip it. It slows me down. It helps me to not just grab something and shove it in my mouth.
Yeah. And the sweet tea, I would say 2 hacks for your sweet tooth. If people do not know about stevia, and I am evangelical about stevia. So
I love stevia too.
Stevia is made from a plant. It's been around for 100 years. The Indians used it to sweeten things. It's 100 times sweeter than sugar, but it's totally natural. So you could grow a stevia plant in your backyard. You could dry the leaves, crunch them up, and put them in your tea or your coffee, and it would be super sweet. Of course, you're not going to do that because you can just go down to any store now and buy stevia. It comes as Truvia, or, stevia is everywhere, but it is great for sweetening coffee, tea, even your fatty yogurt that doesn't taste sweet and you want to sweeten your yogurt. It's a really great way to 0 calories, 0 glycemic spike. You want to stay away from aspartame and saccharin and all those nasty artificial sweeteners. And stevia is out there. The reason it's not, I think that the food industry has lobbyists from the sugar keeping stevia not as a food additive or not as a sweetener. They won't classify it as a sweetener because if stevia gets classified as a sweetener, then everything goes away. Like all the sugar products go away. There's a great soft drink called Zevia with a Z, like zebra. And if you drink Coke or you drink Mountain Dew, there's a Zevia in those flavors with 0 sugar, 0 glycemic spike. Taste amazing. So, stevia is a huge hack. And then talking about tea, there's a tea by Celestial Seasonings called Bengal Spice Tea.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
Evangelize about that, Maria.
Yeah, because Kelly introduced me to it, and we were sitting around after dinner. Sometimes you might crave a bowl of ice cream or a cookie or something in the evening, and Kelly served Jim, my husband, and I this Bengal spice tea, and it is not. There's no sweetener in it, but it is the most amazing, delicious, sweet tasting tea, and it just really hits the spot for me. Like as I've said, I have an incredible sweet tooth that I have to fight all the time, and that Bengal spice tea is fabulous.
Yeah, it's got a tiger on it. It's a beautiful, those Celestial Seasoning boxes. Whenever I go in the grocery store, I just stand there and look at all of them because they're so beautiful. Teas are just such a beautiful world, but Celestial Seasonings, beautiful covers. And this one has a tiger lying down on it, and it's Celestial Seasonings, Bengal spice tea. So that's, if you're trying to, get away from your sweet tooth, try that. You won't even need stevia in there, but if you threw it in there, it would be like a Cadbury cream egg.
Well, no, there's nothing like Cadbury cream egg.
There's nothing like that. Nothing.
It's disgusting, but I do love them. I mean, it would take me about 2 days to go right back into that. Yeah. So that's why I'm pretty vigilant about not eating.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to think about sweets all the time. And I don't know that if you can relate to this, Kelly, but I used to just, it used to be like planning my next sweet. Am I allowed to eat sweets yet? And I just don't do that anymore. I don't think about food as much. I love to cook. I love to make beautiful meals, but I don't want to be thinking about food all the time.
Yeah, and Maria, I love how you and I present the two sides to the coin on this, because I still do love my little sweet something with coffee in the afternoon, and I do. I mean, maybe that's because I'm still eating carbs, not a lot of carbs, but I'm definitely not ketogenic, and nothing makes
you never go overboard with it, Kelly. I've never seen you in your life.
I don't go overboard with it, but I do look forward to my next sweet snack. And one of the another product, and we're not pushing these, we're not getting paid for them, but the Quest bars. So I can't believe we could have a conversation about
chocolate chip cookie dough
and birthday cake and chocolate mint. These Quest is a unique company that was created by Tom and Lisa Bilyeu, and they have this, they want people to not have cardiovascular disease. And these bars were created for their family members that were having cardiovascular disease and diabetes. And it's hard for people to give up their snacks. Like, nothing makes me happier than to sit down in the afternoon and have a Quest bar and a coffee with heavy cream. And, so Quest bars.
That's a beautiful snack.
Yeah,
and it's not bad for you. It's good for you.
Super sweet. So
it's loaded with fiber. They're using the fiber sweeteners.
Yeah, the fiber sweeteners, and one other little snackers, the Choco Zero chocolate with almonds in it. Yeah. So that's a great one. So all these. So I still do. I just reward myself. I know that maybe that's not great and that's not disciplined, but I still do want my sweets, and I just get them.
Well, the thing about you, Kelly, is you stop after one or two. Maybe you don't have to eat the whole bag. And I think people who struggle with food addiction cannot stop themselves.
Yeah. Now Mark will definitely. He still, will be able to eat one Quest bar. I think the Quest bars, they're very filling. I don't think...
Right, because they're loaded with fiber.
They're loaded with fiber. They're big bars. They're chewy. They're delicious. I've never seen I've seen Mark eat multiple Reese's pieces, but or Reese's peanut butter cups, but I've never seen him eat more than one Quest bar. And
Quest bars are really satisfying because you have to really chew on them, and they're sweet, and then that fiber expands in your stomach, and you feel really full.
Yes. So the other acronym that is very helpful for Overeaters Anonymous, but I think it helps for anyone, is sleep. It's SMERF, and it's an E for SMERF, so it's SMERF. So there's sleep, meditation, exercise, rest, and food plan. And I just love those. A lot of times, when Mark is getting into a bad place with his overeating, we have that on a whiteboard in the kitchen, and, he'll say, oh, I haven't meditated, or, oh, I need some rest, or he hasn't been sleeping well. So I just love that. Just checking everything affects the way we look at food. And I love that those 4 items, or 5 SMERF, 5 items, are something that one could check. And then HALT is another one. And I love that you added the T to, are you tired or are you thirsty, to hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or thirsty. So that's a lot of the alphabet soup we have thrown.
I think those are good for not just overeating, but anytime you're doing something that you don't want to be doing. If you find yourself irritable, yelling at your husband, or, whatever, reaching for a glass of, a cup of, of alcohol or beer or something, and you don't really want to be doing it, you can ask yourself if those, go through those acronyms and say, is there something else here? I
love that, Maria. That's so beautiful. It's true. Like, those are just good things. So that's alphabet soup. And, I think our action items, we've kind of talked about all those. We're going to leave with one action item for each. And my action item is going to be to use those acronyms to think about, what you're doing. If you're doing something that is not working for you, think about those acronyms. And do you need sleep? Do you need to meditate? Do you need to exercise? Do you need to rest? And,
are you hungry, angry?
Yeah. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So yeah.
I like that, Kelly. I think those are good action items for humankind.
Oh my gosh, Maria, sorry to interrupt. The F, I didn't even mention the F, which is food plan. Food plan.
Oh yeah.
So you've got to have a food plan. I think no matter what, whether you're ketogenic, whether you're intermittent fasting, any of that, you really need to have a food plan.
And I think my action item actually comes off of that really well. I would encourage anybody who is not happy with their way they're eating right now to do some research, which is planning, right? If we've kind of thrown some stuff out, some hacks and what works for us, but get on the internet and Google intermittent fasting, or Google, ketogenic diet, or, if you're interested in those, just, stop and make a plan. I think I love that. If you're not happy with how it's going, stop, make a new plan, and go for, try a new way.
Great. Well, it's been great spending time with you today. And if you're enjoying our podcast, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to Champions Mojo on YouTube and, leave us a comment or a review on iTunes.
That would be great. We'd love to hear any feedback that you have, good or bad.
Yes, good or bad. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
This week's quote of the week comes to us from Jentizen Franklin. Fasting is like spring cleaning for your body.
We are so grateful that you spent this time with us today, and we hope that you heard something that inspired, motivated, and educated you. Please see below for our copy of the show notes for any links or important information referenced here. Signing off for myself and champion co-host Kelly Pallas, we hope you'll join us again soon, and we know you can be a champion. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast, designed to make you feel inspired, motivated, and educated. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Also visit championsmojo.com to learn more.